If you keep falling for people who never choose you, this isn't bad luck. It's not chemistry. It's your shadow. Emotionally unavailable people don't feel neutral. They don't feel ordinary. They feel intense. And sometimes that intensity is almost addictive. One moment they are warm, kind, and attentive. The next they are distant, cold, or distracted. A simple text that comes late can make your heart race. A small sign of attention feels like a major victory. And in that unpredictability, your brain confuses emotional tension with attraction. Why does this happen? Your nervous system is trained to recognize patterns, not always healthy ones. If you grew up in an environment where attention, love, or approval was inconsistent, your brain learned to respond to emotional spikes. Uncertainty became thrilling. Distance became a signal to try harder. Coldness became a magnet. Calm and consistent love, on the other hand, can feel boring because your mind isn't. Programmed to recognize stability as exciting. This is why emotionally unavailable people feel so magnetic. It's not about them being extraordinary. It's about the way they trigger something deep inside you. Every pullback activates a part of you that craves resolution. Every small connection feels like a reward. Every absence feels like a challenge you need to conquer. Your body interprets inconsistency as intensity, and intensity as desire. You're not actually chasing the person. You're chasing the emotional spike they create. You are unconsciously repeating a pattern that was encoded into you long ago. Understanding this is crucial because it shifts the focus away from blaming yourself or the other person. The attraction isn't a failure. It's a signal. A signal that your mind is seeking completion of an old, unresolved story. Recognizing this is the first step to breaking the cycle. Carl Jung believed that our unconscious mind is formed long before we fully understand love, boundaries, or relationships. Much of what drives your attraction patterns today comes from the early emotional experiences you may not even remember. Ask yourself honestly, did love ever feel safe and steady when you were growing up? Or did it feel conditional, unpredictable, or fleeting? Perhaps approval had to be earned, or affection only arrived when you performed in a way that pleased others. Maybe emotional presence from caregivers was inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes absent, sometimes critical. These early experiences create a blueprint for how your psyche interprets connection. If love was inconsistent, your nervous system learns to anticipate emotional highs and lows rather than steady presence. You are unknowingly drawn to patterns that replicate that early environment because your unconscious believes these are familiar, safe, and even desirable. The emotionally unavailable person triggers the same tension, uncertainty, and longing that your mind first learned to associate with love. It doesn't matter if the relationship is healthy or sustainable. Your subconscious treats the familiar pattern as what love should feel like. This is why people often feel powerless in these relationships. You aren't chasing the person because of who they are. You are chasing the echo of past experiences. That voice in your head, the one saying, "I'll never be enough," or "If I try harder, maybe they'll stay," comes from a wound you learned early in life. And unless you consciously notice it, that pattern will continue, repeating in subtle ways through every connection you form. Recognizing the origin of this wound is painful, but necessary. Once you see it clearly, you understand that your attraction isn't random. It's a reflection of unfinished emotional business from your past. Awareness is the first step toward breaking the cycle and reclaiming your emotional freedom. Carl Jung said something that changes how we see attraction. We don't see people as they are. We see them as we are. This is the essence of shadow projection. The shadow is the part of ourselves we hide, suppress, or deny. All the feelings, desires, and needs we were taught were unacceptable. When someone triggers that shadow, they don't just attract you. They mirror parts of yourself you haven't fully acknowledged. Imagine this. Someone distant, unavailable, or inconsistent walks into your life. To the conscious mind, they may seem flawed or cold. But to the unconscious, they represent an opportunity. They reflect your own unmet needs, your unprocessed emotional pain, or the parts of yourself you were taught to ignore. Suddenly, what should feel frustrating feels magnetic. You defend their absence. You rationalize their inconsistency. You find excuses for their behavior, all because your unconscious is projecting your shadow onto them. Shadow projection explains why emotionally unavailable people feel irresistible, even when logic screams that they aren't right for you. They become a canvas for your unresolved inner conflicts. Every pullback they give you, every distance they maintain, resonates with old emotional wounds. You see potential where there is none, love where there is withdrawal, and connection where there is absence. Understanding this doesn't make the attraction vanish overnight, but it changes the narrative. You begin to see that the pattern isn't about them. It's about the shadow inside you, seeking recognition, expression, and integration. The more you bring awareness to this shadow, the less control these unavailable people have over your emotions. You start to differentiate between who they are and what your mind is projecting. A critical step toward emotional freedom and healthier relationships. Here's the painful truth most people resist. Emotionally unavailable people don't choose you. Not fully, not consistently. Because part of you is already emotionally unavailable to yourself. You may overgive, compromise, or silence your needs to make them stay. You may tolerate behavior that would be unacceptable in a healthy relationship. And while you're focused on them, your shadow whispers, if you try harder, if you sacrifice more, maybe they'll finally love you. This isn't weakness, it's conditioning. From early experiences, your mind learned that love had to be earned, not received freely. You learned that approval was conditional, attention was unpredictable, and affection required effort or sacrifice. The emotionally unavailable person mirrors that same dynamic, triggering the familiar pattern. You chase them not because of who they are, but because your psyche sees the relationship as a chance to resolve unfinished emotional business, to rewrite a story that started long before you were aware of it. The more you try to fix them or make them choose you, the more the pattern repeats. Their unavailability isn't random. It resonates with your own self-abandonment, your tolerance of uncertainty, and your habit of putting your needs last. You might justify it, blame yourself, or believe the cycle is inevitable, but the pattern is a reflection of what you unconsciously accept from yourself. The first step to breaking it is understanding that the issue isn't them, it's you. Not as blame, but as awareness. Once you see that your attraction is linked to your own emotional unavailability, the parts of you you ignore or suppress, you can begin to reclaim your power. Only then can you stop chasing patterns that never lead to fulfillment and start seeking relationships that reflect the love, consistency, and safety you deserve. Breaking the cycle of attraction to emotionally unavailable people doesn't happen because someone finally chooses you. It doesn't happen because they become consistent or change for you. The pattern only ends when you start choosing differently, when you stop giving your energy to people who mirror your old wounds and start giving it to yourself. The first step is awareness, recognizing that the attraction isn't about them, but about your own unhealed parts, is both uncomfortable and liberating. You begin to see the subtle ways you've tolerated uncertainty, explained absence, and minimized your own needs. Awareness creates a gap, a pause, between impulse and action, between old patterns and conscious choice. And in that gap, change becomes possible. The second step is self-alignment. This is where shadow work comes in. You reclaim the parts of yourself you've ignored, abandoned, or judged. You validate the needs that were dismissed, soothe the fears that were suppressed, and honor the emotions that were denied. When you integrate these aspects of your shadow, your inner emotional world becomes stable. Suddenly, consistency, presence, and reliability no longer feel boring. They feel safe, grounding, and deeply satisfying. The third step is boundary setting. You stop tolerating behavior that triggers old wounds. You refuse to chase attention or affection. You stop rationalizing absence or ignoring red flags. Your energy is now protected, focused, and aligned with your well-being. And finally, patience and practice are essential. Patterns don't dissolve overnight. Each relationship, each interaction, becomes an opportunity to test your awareness, reinforce your boundaries, and choose what truly serves you. When these steps are taken, the cycle of chasing unavailable people loses its hold. Emotional freedom emerges, and you no longer confuse intensity with love.